successful missions to another world.
Oh my God!
Revealing breathtaking, never-before-seen vistas of the Red Planet.
There's something just absolutely magical about that. It is like being there.
The Martian rovers, Spirit and Opportunity were expected to last just 3 months. More than 7 years on, Opportunity is still rolling, but Spirit has reached the end of the road.
We're driving a wounded vehicle through very treacherous terrain, and we do it.
Spirit may be lost, but its pioneering accomplishments and dramatic discoveries will endure. A day on Mars, or Sol, is about 40 minutes longer than the average day on Earth. By late September 2008, NASA's Martian rovers had spent more than 1,600 sols on the alien surface. Opportunity had a bad wheel and a crippled arm, but was close to the equator charged with plenty of solar power. It was sent towards Endeavour Crater, some 12 kilometers away. On the other side of the planet, her twin had fewer options. Further from the equator and coated with dust, Spirit had to park on a steep bank, with solar panels tilted towards the feeble sunlight to survive the coming winter. Both rovers had taken a beating, but had survived years longer than anyone had expected.
At this point, every day's a gift. We just push the vehicles as hard as we can, enjoy them while we got them, and someday they're going to die, and I don't know when.
It takes Mars 2 Earth years to orbit the Sun, so Martian seasons are twice as long. Spirit had been parked for almost 300 sols by the time summer returned. Its solar panels were even dirtier, producing a fraction of the power they once did. But to survive the next winter, it had to move to another place where the angle of the sun could flood the panels with maximum light. Controllers chose a small hill south of a plateau dubbed Home Plate. Commands were sent from NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab in California, but these commands would take 20 minutes to cross the vast distance from Earth to Mars. It was like driving a car with a 20-minute delay.
You really are programming the rover. It's not a joystick. It's, okay, go 10 meters forward, turn 5 degrees, check for obstacles, measure your progress.
Controllers had learned to cope with Spirit's biggest handicap, a front wheel that seized up 2 years into the mission. They'd been driving her backwards, dragging the crippled wheel through the dust and dirt behind. Although the average speed was just 30 meters an hour, driving it was a stressful, high-risk job.
The rover's safety depends on those guys doing their job right. Okay, the person who's running the pan cam camera is not going to drive the rover off a cliff or get it stuck in a sand dune. That's the rover drivers.
The safest route for Spirit was up and across the plateau, but the crippled rover couldn't climb up the ledge. Controllers tried steering it around the east side, but ran into soft ground. Their only option was to go round the other way, into unknown alien terrain. As Spirit trundled on, the view from the rover's cameras looked clear.
It looked the same as terrain we had driven over hundreds of times before.
But Mars is full of surprises. What looked like solid ground was a thin crust that suddenly gave way.
and the wheels started spinning in this very fluffy, soft stuff, and we just couldn't get any traction.
We're driving a wounded vehicle through very treacherous terrain, and we knew it. This is the kind of trap that we knew might be out there waiting for us. That's why we didn't want to go down there in the first place, but it was the only way to get where we wanted to go.
Trying to maneuver Spirit out of the sand trap only made the wheels stick deeper into the soft ground.
One day we were looking carefully at the terrain models when we discovered that there was a rock underneath the vehicle.
This is pretty much your nightmare scenario for this Rover design, because you can get to a point where you're kind of hung up on something and all your wheels are kind of flailing and you're unable to ever touch the ground.
Bogged in a dust bowl and possibly stuck on a rock, the only wheel on solid ground was the one that didn't work. But then a stray gust of wind blew the dust off Spirit's solar panels, boosting its power and buying some time.
Stand by.
The Rover team spent the next 7 months trying to come up with a plan to free Spirit from the trap they called Troy.
We really had to stop and take a very careful look, because at that point, anything we did could have made it impossible to get out.
Well, the 4071 has a lot.
Long before Spirit got stuck, both rovers had far exceeded their original missions. Designed to travel just 600 meters on flat ground, they'd covered many kilometers, exploring Mars in a way that had never been done before. They climbed mountains, explored craters, and transformed our understanding of the Red Planet. They cheated death many times, surviving dust storms, quicksand, and broken wheels. For those who worked with them, they were much more than mere machines.
I think the thing that draws people to them the most is the way that they experience this adventure. They get into trouble. You know, bad things happen to them, and then they manage to get out of trouble and keep going, or they don't.
They had explored non-stop for more than 2,000 Martian days. As one shut down for the night, on the opposite side of the planet, the other would wake up with the sun, call home, and get ready for another day's work. But on Sol 1899, Spirit's mission became a rescue operation. The rover waited for instructions from Earth, 400 million kilometers away. Life on Mars had always been more of a struggle for Spirit than opportunity. Opportunity got off to a quick start in January 2004 after a 7-month journey from Earth. Touching down in a region called Meridiani in an airbag cocoon. She rolled into a shallow crater. Mission controllers anxiously awaited the first pictures from Mars. Opportunity emerged from her protective shell. Directly in front of the rover, that kind of feature it had been sent to look for. Such geology would help scientists work out what the early environment on Mars was like, and provide vital clues to that ultimate cosmic mystery, the existence of extraterrestrial life. The rovers were looking for evidence of liquid water, a fundamental necessity of life on Earth. From orbit, it was clear that the arid, apparently lifeless Martian landscape was scarred with ancient river channels, shorelines, and deltas. But to find out whether a wet Mars could have supported life, a ground mission was needed to explore and probe the sterile surface.
How much water was there? What was its chemistry? Suppose you were a microbe, would you have liked that place or not? If so, why?
The rovers were designed to find clues about the ancient Martian environment preserved in rocks and minerals. Their robotic arms deployed an array of tools to grind away weathered surfaces and analyze the rock underneath. They scanned the terrain in 3 dimensions with 4 pairs of stereo cameras. A high-resolution panoramic camera provided breathtaking vistas made of individual frames matched together. Color filters revealed details invisible to human eyes, and an infrared spectrometer scanned for minerals that may have formed in the presence of water. Wide-angled black and white stereo vision aided navigation, while fisheye cameras recorded the terrain at ground level, looking backward and forward. Opportunity went to work immediately, making a series of startling discoveries. It recorded strange tiny spheres littering the ground and embedded in the rock. They turned out to be an iron mineral called hematite. On Earth, such spheres are formed in water-soaked rock. Sulfur-rich minerals that can only form in a wet environment were also discovered. And finally, its cameras captured petrified ripples created by flowing water, frozen in time as sand turned to stone. All of the evidence pointed to a time billions of years ago when salty, acidic water soaked and sometimes flowed over Mars, the kind of environment where microbes flourished on Earth.
It was a new Mars. We were giddy, we were incredulous, we were sleep-deprived beyond words. It was so tiring, but we were just running on adrenaline, you know? And it was just so much fun. It was the most fun I've ever had as a scientist. It was just fabulous.
In just 3 months, Opportunity accomplished everything the scientists had hoped for, and set off to another crater nearby. But on the other side of Mars, Spirit was struggling. NASA's Martian rover Spirit was the first to land on the Red Planet. It touched down 3 weeks ahead of Opportunity in the 160-kilometer wide Gusev crater. It was thought to have been an ancient lake, but Spirit found nothing but volcanic rock.
I wouldn't have wanted to admit it at the time, but the Spirit landing site initially was a crushing disappointment. We went there looking for layered sedimentary rocks laid down billions of years ago in a Martian lake, and instead we got lava as far as the eye could see. And every damn rock was like every other damn rock. They were just all the same. And the Spirit team got a little disheartened after a while.
Well, I mean, what you would call, I don't know.
Spirit became the underdog.
People just got emotionally attached to their rover. You know, I tell them, well, you switch to Opportunity. And they say, no, I'm not going to. Because they had gotten their heart set on Spirit succeeding.
Opportunity was certainly the lucky rover, but for me, I worked on Spirit, and Spirit is my favorite rover because Spirit had to work for everything she ever got in her life.
To salvage the mission, Spirit was sent on a 2.5-kilometer journey into the Columbia Hills. A 2-month trek, 4 times further than it was ever expected to drive. Engineers didn't think the embattled rover could make it.
I remember he said that. This is where we're going. What do you mean, you're going to drive up in those hills? Wait, this is going to be a lot more than 90 days. Good luck. We're probably going to die on the way there. He said, no, we're going to go. That's okay. You're driving. You've got the keys. Good luck.
We're 100 sols into our 90-sol mission. The warranty's expired. Our only chance of getting to something new was to push the vehicle beyond anything it had ever been designed to handle. Otherwise, it was going to be just lava until the end of the mission.
While Spirit embarked on its journey into the unknown, Opportunity made it to the rim of Endurance crater. The exposed bedrock was another window into the red planet's geological past.
Oh my God.
The rovers weren't designed to scramble in and out of craters. But the scientific treasure trove at the bottom was too tempting to miss.
We all wanted to go in. I mean, we're standing on the lip of the most magnificent thing anyone's ever seen on Mars. We're the rover that we all believe in our hearts can do it.
Before sending the rover down, they staged a kind of test run with a spare rover back on Earth.
And in fact, the thing climbed beautifully. I was stunned by how well this thing could climb steep slopes, as long as they were rocky. 30, 32 degrees, right up it. It was amazing.
Opportunity was directed into Endurance crater in June 2004. Meanwhile, on the other side of Mars, Spirit had spent 8 weeks crawling across a desert of fractured lava to the base of the Columbia Hills. Controllers hoped the epic journey would pay off, but the trek took a heavy toll on the Spirit rover. Caked with dust, its solar panels could only produce half of their generating capacity. They were the only source of energy, and the Martian winter was approaching.
The seasons were changing. Spirit is in the southern hemisphere of Mars, and what that means is in the winter, the sun is going to go low in the northern sky, and it's going to get lower and lower and lower, and as it gets lower, the amount of power that we're going to get from solar arrays is going to get less and less and less unless we can do something.
Controllers needed to tilt its dirty panels to get the most out of the feeble winter sun.
Well, we didn't build a tilt mechanism into the rover. The only way to tilt them towards the sun is to tilt the whole rover towards the sun. But the beauty of it was, now we had a hill.
If they could keep its solar panels facing the sun, there was a chance that Spirit could survive the winter and keep crawling up the mountain at the same time.
It started to dawn on us that we maybe had more life in this thing than we had thought.
On a sunny slope inside Endurance crater, Opportunity thrived all winter. Sampling rocks from the crater wall, the rover was peering back even further into ancient Martian history. The evidence suggested that water had flowed there for millions of years. After that, Opportunity needed new terrain or different features to explore. The most tempting target was 6 kilometers to the south, a huge impact crater called Victoria. Deeper than Endurance, it was a chance to look even further back in time. 6 kilometers was a long haul, but it looked like easy going for most of the way.
They basically handed us the keys and said, all right, you've got this big parking lot from here to there. Go for it.
Months later, Opportunity pulled up to the rim of Victoria Crater. She would spend almost 2 years crawling in and out of the vast basin, adding more compelling detail to the red planet's watery past. On the other side of Mars in the Columbia Hills, Spirit was also making intriguing finds. Rocks that had been altered by water or steam.
Now what we didn't see was lake deposits. Remember, that was what we went to Gusev for. But we were definitely starting to see a different side of Gusev Crater.
But by then, Spirit's solar panels were so dirty, they could barely generate enough power to get the rover through the night. But help was on its way. The windy season had arrived. One day, a random gust hit the rover, and she was clean again. Spirit sent back this picture of her deck just before the cleanup. And this one just after.
It's a new lease on life. We've got more power than we can use. I mean, we have to shut the vehicle down during the afternoon to keep it from overheating. It's producing so much power. It was just astonishing.
With power to spare, the summit dubbed Husband Hill now seemed within reach. Conquering it was more than a mere scientific endeavor, but the chance to be the first explorer to reach the top of an alien mountain. In September 2005, NASA's Spirit rover claimed a cosmic milestone. It was the first to conquer the summit of an alien mountain on Mars.
She stands there at the top of that hill that she's conquered now on another planet, and she looks at the whole world around her. I love her for bringing us that.
More than anything else, I think I felt, gosh, aren't we lucky to do what we do? You know, we just climbed the mountain on Mars. Damn.
It would prove to be the highlight of a mission that would become bogged down in fine Martian soil. The way out lay in exhaustive experiments back on Earth. 4 years into the mission, the Spirit rover was trapped. Controllers were desperate to set her free. The spare rover left behind on Earth was used as a guinea pig in a Mars sand trap simulation experiment. They put the spare rover into the same kind of soil, on the same kind of slope, testing different maneuvers, and working out the best way to free Spirit from her sandy snag.
when we test getting out, we don't want to do anything that would harm the real vehicle. The real vehicle is a one-of-a-kind, priceless resource, and if we're in this kind of trouble, we want to do all the testing we possibly can with a vehicle that we can pick up and move if we have to.
They had faced a similar rescue mission years before. Opportunity ran into trouble on what should have been an easy drive to Victoria Crater.
It was just these gentle, sloping dunes, literally all the way to the horizon. There wasn't a rock or a hazard to be seen anywhere. And we figured, oh gosh, you could drive blind in this area. It was so safe.
We were using a driving technique that I think could be charitably described as bombing along at top speed with our eyes closed.
Flight mobility.
Go ahead, mobility.
Up on screen number 3 is the trajectory the rover believes that it drove.
On Mars, bombing along soon backfired. Opportunity's wheels were buried to the hubs in deep sand. To extend the life of the tires, the probe had been driven in both reverse and forward gears. In this case, Opportunity had backed into a sand trap.
The wheels broke through the surface, and we did 50 meters worth of wheel turns, thinking we were happily progressing across the Meridiani Planum surface, and instead we were just digging slowly down and down into the sand.
Wheels look like they're about 80% under the ground there.
It took some time to finalize an escape plan.
The first rule in a situation like that is don't do anything dumb.
It literally didn't make much more progress after about this point.
We shouldn't have gotten into this mess in the first place, but let's not make it worse by guessing how to get out of it.
They built a Martian-like sand trap and ran the spare rover through it. They found out that the best approach was to put it in reverse and gun the engine. For a rover, though, gunning it happens in slow motion.
We had to do 192 meters worth of wheel turns on Mars to get the vehicle to move 1 meter. Took days and days and days, and you do 4 meters, 8 meters worth of turns, and you come in the next morning and it went that far.
After days of work, Opportunity finally broke free. But this incident was a minor hiccup compared to the trap that Spirit found itself bogged into on the other side of Mars. A rock underneath the rover may have snagged it for good. They deployed a microscopic imager on the end of its robotic arm for a close-up view. But the camera wasn't designed to focus beyond 6.5 centimeters. Controllers couldn't tell if it was a jutting boulder or a loose stone. With every turn of its wheels, Spirit and the morale of mission staff back on Earth sunk deeper.
Well, there's a lot of stress. People are having a hard time. We all are. If the rover is permanently stuck, that is a big deal.
After a month of testing in a sandbed on Earth, researchers presented their best ideas for getting the stricken Spirit rover out of its trap on Mars.
As you know, Spirit is embedded on the west side of home plate. It is a 5-wheel driving rover.
A lot of eyes were on us, and we had to make absolutely sure that we were doing the best thing that we could.
All right, so this is a view of the area in which we are currently embedded. So this is
peering underneath and taking a series of images that shows we may well be high-centered on a rock. So we have to kind of get away from that if we possibly
Sink significantly, and we continue to sink as long as we're spinning the wheel.
I thought you mentioned that. I think the reality is we're going to sink here, and I think it's a currency we have to trade in order to make forward progress.
Let's wait a minute, because you've got the high centering hazard, right? So you don't want to be in a situation where you're loading that, you're loading it.
What do we do on Monday if we can drive? What is the preferred plan? Yeah, let's get that out there.
Let's bring the drive extraction plan back up, and we'll look at that again. Since we were dealing with brand new territory, there were a lot of different options on the table that we didn't really know how well they would work.
I'm going to go around the room, starting with the review board. Chris, your comments, please.
This is hard to make any comments at this point, because I think what you guys have actually done is struggle in the test bed with everything that you've tried. And so I would at first consider as a project whether you guys are actually done in the test bed. You know, do some soul searching and really consider if you've done everything you should or set up everything that you would want to before committing to a move forward. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Chris. Does anyone else have an immediate time constraint?
I knew that meeting was going to be difficult.
Okay.
You know, we want to get going, want to start driving with Spirit. I think we were all naturally disappointed that we weren't quite ready yet to proceed to the next step.
It was back to the test bed.
If there's a way of getting the rover out, we're going to find it. It is, however, a very, very difficult situation.
To make matters worse, the only wheel on solid ground was broken and quite useless. It was the result of a malfunction that occurred soon after Spirit's triumphant ascent of the peak dubbed Husband Hill. The rover had been directed to a hillside just beyond an interesting feature called Home Plate.
It was an obvious target to try to get to, but it was a long way off.
Spirit needed to get to the hillside that would provide maximum sunlight over winter. In 100 Martian days, or sols, Spirit was just 300 meters from the ideal winter refuge.
What happened, though, was the right front wheel quit. The right front wheel just stopped turning. That came at a really bad time because we were trying to get onto the slopes of McCool Hill, and without that wheel functioning properly, we can't climb.
Using the spare test rover on Earth, they experimented with different driving techniques. Driving backwards, dragging the dead wheel behind, proved most effective. But it also pulled the rover off course, making driving more complicated.
Each day we only had an hour to an hour and a half of power, and we had to write these incredibly complicated sequences of, sometimes 400 commands just to try to drive 5 meters.
We were really in a race against the clock because we had something like 3 weeks before Spirit just wasn't going to have enough energy to survive the night. And people were talking about her like she was the Walking Dead.
We're learning to drive all over again. Seasons are changing, the power's getting less and less daily, everybody's starting to get nervous, and then we get stuck.
We got into this. It's kind of like quicksand, and we couldn't get out of it. So we were thinking, oh my God, are we going to be stuck here? And is the rover going to die here?
You know, when you go to the grocery store and you get the shopping cart with the one stuck wheel, and you're trying to get that down the aisle, driving Spirit at this point is a lot like trying to do that in quicksand. Only your shopping cart is 300 million miles away and you have to drive it with a keyboard.
By the time they got Spirit free, it was too late to reach the sunny side of the hill.
Forget about this stuff hundreds of meters away. We're never going to make it. What do we got that's next to us?
The nearest alternative provided a 12-degree tilt toward the sun. But was it enough?
And that was it. And there we sat for 7 months. But we survived.
It was a close call, and the first time the rover had to sit out the winter season. Months later, when Spirit was driving again, its dead wheel dragging behind, unearthed a sensation.
We're driving along one day in this little valley. We look at the pictures of the trench that we dug that day, and there's this one spot where the soil is practically as bright as white snow. That got our attention.
They'd seen bright soil in the tracks before, but nothing like this.
Turns out this stuff is more than 90% pure silica. Not quartz, this is not beach sand, this is amorphous silica. It's like opal. All of a sudden we realized we've just come across something completely new and different that we had never seen before.
This kind of silica almost certainly formed in ancient hydrothermal systems like hot springs or volcanic steam vents.
And the thing that's cool about that is you could go to hydrothermal systems on Earth and they're teeming with microbial life. And that makes it a pretty important place.
One of the greatest discoveries on Mars had come about because of a broken wheel. And in the very soil of Spirit's sandy trap, another accidental discovery provided even more excitement.
The rovers have found evidence of ancient water on Mars, maybe 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. But this is possible evidence of liquid water action maybe as recently as 1 million years ago.
For the science team, this area was fascinating, but from an engineering perspective, it was hell, because how are you going to get out of that stuff? We just couldn't go anywhere in it.
Spirit had been stuck for 7 months. Dust was again piling up and blocking the solar panels, and another winter was approaching.
We were running out of time. After all of our testing, we came up with a plan that we thought would work, and we were ready to try it out on Mars.
They planned to back out with a turn that might help the rover clear the rock, but they soon hit another snag.
What makes this so frustrating is that just after we started implementing the plan, another wheel failed. So now instead of a vehicle with 5 wheels and 1 anchor stuck in the sand, we have 4 wheels and 2 anchors and less time. No time to like stand down and do anything about it. So we really had to just completely fly by the seat of our pants.
A view of one spinning wheel from a rover camera inspired a new strategy.
Somebody likened our condition to having to swim through a fluid, and we thought about that, and the strategy we came up with was kind of using the wheels, steering them back and forth in kind of a breaststroke maneuver, trying to sort of swim our way through this material, and sure enough, it started working. And we were making really good progress. In fact, we got to the point where that rock that was underneath us that we were so worried about appeared in the front hazard camera. And we were off that rock.
They were off the rock, but out of time.
The part of it that really breaks my heart is that we were making progress. We just needed a little more time and we would have done it. But we had winter coming on and we just ran down to the point where we didn't have power to drive anymore.
In March 2010, Spirit did not call home for a scheduled communication check. Starved of solar energy, the rover most likely went into hibernation mode. It remained to be seen whether Spirit would ever wake up again. It was hoped that Spirit would come back online when summer returned and the sun was higher in the sky.
Even then, we still had a lot of hope for her. We still believed that she was going to come out of it.
But winter nights on Mars can freeze to around 100 degrees below zero. Enough to kill circuits and electronics for good. NASA has a deep space network that monitors signals from space probes like the Martian Rover Spirit. But the line had gone dead.
So our hopes that she would just come back online and wake up and phone home, that didn't pan out. It could be something as simple as the main antenna is not working and that we could possibly regain contact through another path, or it could be that she's just not awake.
In April 2011, they made a final effort to make contact.
And it's radiating, it will take 4.5 minutes, and then once that's done, just 5 more times.
We're involved in a very extensive recovery effort, building and sending commands to the rover in the hope of eliciting some sort of response.
And it's possible signal to try to acquire it.
Copy that, and when you get a chance, let me know the time. And then, hey John, we
2202.
copy 220212 possible signal. He hasn't locked on it. Okay. If he locks on it, I'll print that out. Yesterday we did lock on one.
Spirit had pulled things out of the fire so many times. I don't think anybody truly believed that she wouldn't get out of this one too.
But Spirit was silent. On the 25th of May, 2011, controllers made one last attempt.
So, crush fingers. Cross all of them. Cross them.
Even now, at the last minute, when it looks like we may not be able to reestablish contact with Spirit, I have to say there's still that element of hope that somehow, some way, right at the last minute when it's as dramatic as possible, Spirit will call back home. But if she doesn't, of course, that's going to be a very difficult day.
I've been missing her for a long time, and it's tough to kind of put a finality to that and say, okay, that last time you heard from her is the last time you were ever going to hear from her.
People are holding out hope, but I think the reality is people have to start to accept that Spirit's time on Mars may be done.
While Spirit seemingly expired, its sister rover Opportunity continued to trek to Endeavour crater. She was seen from orbit at the rim of a smaller crater called Santa Maria, more than 27 kilometers from her original landing site. Her target, the Endeavour crater, was still 6 kilometers away. It takes up to a year to cover that distance on Mars. Spirit has remained at her final resting place next to the home plate plateau. A hard-fought 8 kilometers from her landing site on the far side of the Columbia Hills. Both rovers have accomplished far more than expected in more than 7 years of exciting exploration on Mars.
They've been through so much. I mean, the perils that they have been through and that we've kind of suffered through with them. It's like any kind of relationship with somebody. As you go through many things over the years, the relationship deepens.
She lived a great life. We sent her to a nasty, unforgiving hellhole, and she did a great job. We feel so close to these vehicles. They are our bodies. They are the way that we go to Mars. And we're people who grew up dreaming about the possibility that one day we might walk on other worlds. In the whole history of humanity, these are our first chance to ever go walking around on another planet. They've made it possible for us. And the thought that Spirit's not going to be there anymore and she's not going to continue to be our body on Mars, it's terrible.
Spirit may still be clinging on to life, but Mission Control can't keep listening out forever.
You'd like to think at that point, well, you turn it off. Well, we can't turn them off. They don't have an off switch. If you build a piece of hardware with an off switch, you might accidentally hit that off switch when you don't mean to, and you don't want to do that. So we have no way to turn them off. There's not a command that you can send that says, okay, you're done. It will obediently sit there, listening for commands from Earth every day, as long as it's alive and able to do so, just waiting for its next set of instructions. You can't turn the things off. Can't do it.
And even when we have long gone, Spirit and Opportunity will survive as monuments to pioneering space exploration.
It's dry, there's no vegetation, they're not going to rust or anything like that. These things could be still sitting there with their aluminum surfaces shining a million years from now. They're going to last a long, long time. Longer than most things that humans have ever built.
Don't miss Saxon Gold. New secrets revealed. Brand new on Wednesday at 9.